Picture two worlds. In one, a steel colossus slides silently through the ocean, glowing at night like a floating city. On its back, 20,000 containers stacked in neat Lego-like rows. Each one looks identical, but inside they hold everything that keeps the global economy alive. Your sneakers, your sofa, the lithium batteries for your phone. Together, they're worth billions. Behind this ship are spreadsheets and signatures. Somewhere in an office, a database tracks every container by number. Customs agencies log their origins. Banks finance the cargo. Satellites orbit overhead, watching the vessel crawl across the ocean like a pixel on a map. This is trade at its most industrial, most computerized, most bureaucratic. Now, cut the scene. Zoom out of the port, out of the ocean, across the Mediterranean, until silence swallows the sound. The horizon shimmers, heat bends the air, and in the distance, a caravan emerges. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of camels sway in single file. Their backs are bent under loads of salt, dates, or gold. Instead of steel boxes, there are leather sacks. Instead of satellites, there are stars. Instead of paperwork, there are songs, oral contracts recited by memory, promises carried not in ink but in trust. The men leading them wear indigo-dyed robes that stain their skin blue. The Tuareg, sometimes called the blue people of the desert. Their economy doesn't need cranes or global treaties. It runs on endurance, memory, and the peculiar physics of camels, creatures that can walk 40 kilometers a day, drink once a week, and still carry a man plus 150 kilograms of cargo. The desert does not forgive mistakes. A single wrong turn and the horizon erases you. Yet for centuries, the Tuareg have crossed this emptiness, turning the Sahara into an artery of wealth. And here's the paradox. Both of these systems, the megaship crawling across the ocean and the caravan crawling across the desert, are supply chains. Both move goods across vast, hostile landscapes. One is powered by steel and bureaucracy, the other by flesh, memory, and trust. And for centuries, the desert system was every bit as effective as the maritime one. How could two supply chains, one backed by satellites, databases, and international law, and the other by memory, starlight, and a few thousand camels, both work reliably for centuries? The answer is trust. In the modern system, trust is embedded in paperwork. Every container has a bill of lading. Every shipment is backed by insurance. If something goes wrong, contracts are enforced in courts. Banks guarantee payments, customs authorities police transactions, and layers of bureaucracy make sure that when you order sneakers in November, they arrive in December. But in the desert, none of this existed. No signatures, no databases, no courts. Yet caravans still delivered. How? Trust was guaranteed, not by paper, but by people. A Tuareg trader's word was as binding as a contract. His clan's reputation was collateral. If he betrayed an agreement, if he stole, failed to deliver, or abandoned his cargo, his entire family line could be barred from future trade. In the Sahara, that was a harsher punishment than any fine. To be cut off from the caravan network was to be cut off from survival itself. Picture a deal at a desert market. No ink is spilled. Instead, men sit cross-legged, exchange goods, and recite promises aloud. These oral contracts are remembered by both parties. A promise wasn't just heard, it was witnessed, repeated, and embedded into communal memory. Break it, and the desert would remember. Trust also came from interdependence. A caravan leader might guide dozens of traders through routes he alone knew, the location of wells, the direction of stars, the landmarks half buried in sand. Betray him, and you might find yourself alone in a landscape that erases mistakes. Betray your client, and word would spread faster than the wind. The desert has no walls, but its memory is longer than stone. So while modern trade relies on signatures and stamps, the Tuareg relied on lineage, reputation, and collective enforcement. One system says, "I trust this contract." The other says, "I trust this man and the family behind him." Different mechanisms, but the same outcome: goods delivered, promises kept. And perhaps that's the riddle. Which is stronger? A sheet of paper signed in ink, or a word spoken beneath desert stars, backed by the weight of generations? Camels camels were more than animals. They were engineering marvels designed by evolution for this brutal trade. Their padded feet spread across sand like snowshoes. Their humps stored not just fat, but endurance, allowing them to walk 40 kilometers a day and go a week without water. In every sense, they were ships of the desert, carrying men and cargo across an ocean of sand. But even the best ship cannot sail without a captain. Caravan leaders were human GPS units. They memorized thousands of kilometers of routes. Knowledge passed through generations, guarded like treasure. They knew which wells still held water and which were poisoned with salt. They recognized the texture of sand that hinted at a buried oasis. They read the stars like maps inked across the night sky. To lose a guide was to risk losing the entire caravan. The cargo itself was not just goods, it was value transformed. Salt, hacked from the mines of Taudeni in slabs heavy enough to bow a camel's back, was so precious it sometimes traded ounce for ounce with gold. Gold dust carried south could buy food, cloth, and luxuries. A single caravan could change the fortunes of a city, and cities did rise. Timbuktu, Gao, and Agadez were not built on fertile soil, but on the backs of caravans. Their mosques and markets, their libraries filled with manuscripts, were the byproduct of Tuareg supply chains that stitched together the Maghreb and West Africa. Without camel trains, these cities would have been swallowed by the desert. With them, they became centers of learning, wealth, and power. Yet caravan life was punishing. Traders marched under a merciless sun, their lungs burning with salt dust, their lips cracking in the dry wind. Sandstorms could erase the horizon, swallowing men and camels alike. Wells ran dry, bandits prowled the routes, waiting for the weak. Camels collapsed under their loads. Men collapsed beside them. There was no insurance, no safety net. Entire families could lose their fortunes in a single journey. Still, they endured. For every caravan that failed, dozens succeeded. For centuries, this system worked, slower than ships, smaller in scale, but astonishingly resilient. Empires rose and fell. Colonial borders were drawn and redrawn, but the caravans kept moving. When Rome collapsed, the caravans crossed. When the Ottomans ruled, the caravans crossed. Even today, long after satellites have mapped the desert, there are routes where only memory and camel tracks guide the way. Caravan trade was not romantic. It was survival, sharpened into efficiency by necessity. And survival has always been the most reliable form of economics. Salt and gold are no longer the lifeblood of the desert. Today, the Tuareg networks move something else, goods that governments forbid, but people cannot live without. In Agadez, northern Niger, the markets overflow with contraband. Cartons of European cigarettes stacked higher than the vendors themselves. Jerry cans of subsidized Algerian fuel, sold for a fraction of official prices. Crates of cheap electronics, phones, solar panels, radios, smuggled across borders where customs officers rarely patrol. To outsiders, it looks like chaos. To locals, it is survival. Without these shadow caravans, bread would double in price, transport would stall, towns would starve. For the Tuareg, this is not smuggling in the sense outsiders mean. It is livelihood. It is continuity. They are doing what their ancestors always did, moving what others need across landscapes others cannot cross. A border on a map means little when your clan has traveled the route for centuries. The cargo has changed with the times. In the 1970s, it was tobacco. By the 1990s, gasoline flowed south in endless convoys. In the 2000s, it was people. Thousands of West Africans, farmers from Nigeria, students from Ghana, young men from Senegal, paid smugglers to guide them north. Pickups replaced camels, but the principle was the same: trust the Tuareg to know the way. It is a dangerous trust. Convoys of migrants sometimes vanish into the sand, abandoned when trucks break down, or when drivers demand more money mid-route. A flat tire, a lost well, a sudden sandstorm. Each can turn a journey into a death sentence. The Sahara does not forgive mistakes, not even for those who know it best. Governments condemn this trade. Economists call it the informal economy. But in practice, these flows are the arteries that keep regions alive. In northern Niger, smuggling often generates more income than mining or agriculture. In Mali, rebel-held towns still see markets filled with sugar, rice, and fuel because Tuareg traders deliver when state trucks will not. Even in Algeria and Libya, subsidies meant for citizens leak across the desert, stabilizing communities far beyond the state's reach. This creates a paradox. States cannot fully stop the Tuareg supply chain because in many places it is the only supply chain. Soldiers may chase smugglers by day, then buy their bread or fuel at night. Police at checkpoints sometimes act less like enforcers and more like toll collectors. In truth, the line between legal and illegal is blurred, as it has always been in the desert, and the ripple effects stretch far beyond Africa. Migrant routes through Agadez shaped debates in European parliaments. Subsidized fuel smuggled out of Libya changes transport costs in Niger. Weapons flowing through hidden corridors alter wars from Mali to the Mediterranean. A single Tuareg convoy, unseen by the wider world, can ripple across continents. In the silence of the Sahara, an invisible economy hums, one that sustains the forgotten, unsettles the powerful, and proves that the oldest supply chain in the world still has teeth. Now set the Tuareg caravan beside the global supply chain, and the contrasts and the echoes become impossible to miss. In one world, a container ship glides into Shanghai, tracked by satellites and timetables set months in advance. Towering cranes swing like iron giants, lifting steel boxes in choreographed precision. Trucks idle at the gates, waiting for cargo that will be scanned, stamped, insured, and distributed across a web of railroads and highways. Every movement is recorded, every checkpoint documented, every delay logged into a database. In the other world, a camel caravan sways into an oasis at dawn. The animals kneel, groaning under their loads as men unload slabs of salt by hand. There are no scanners or forklifts, just ropes, sweat, and patience. Instead of customs officials, there are elders or armed patrols who demand tribute. Instead of paperwork, there are oral promises, enforced not by courts, but by memory and honor. Customs illustrates the parallel perfectly. At a seaport, cargo is inspected, fees are collected, and documents stamped before the goods can pass. In the desert, the process is different but familiar. A caravan reaches a checkpoint controlled by another clan or militia. A negotiation follows. Payment may be in coin, goods, or favors. Sometimes kinship grants free passage. Both systems extract value at the border. One calls it taxation, the other calls it tribute, but the principle is the same. Insurance also takes different forms. In the modern world, a contract guarantees compensation if a container is lost. In the desert, insurance was your clan's reputation. Break a promise, and your entire lineage could lose access to trade routes. In some ways, this communal enforcement was harsher than any fine A court could levy. Even their weaknesses rhyme. Global supply chains seize when a storm closes a port, when pirates hijack a vessel, when bureaucracy chokes a shipment in red tape. Tuareg caravans falter when a well dries, when bandits ambush a convoy, when a sandstorm buries the path. Both are vast, both are fragile at the edges. And corruption? At a port, a bribe slides across a desk to move cargo faster. In the desert, it changes hands beneath a tent. The actors are different, but the transaction is the same. Bending rules to keep goods flowing. What's most striking is that neither system is fully local or fully global. A phone shipped across the Pacific may contain cobalt mined in Congo, moved through informal networks not unlike the Tuaregs. A sack of rice sold in Timbuktu may have arrived on the back of a camel, but its journey began in a foreign aid warehouse thousands of kilometers away. The two systems blur, overlap, and merge until the line between formal and informal is almost impossible to draw. Scale and speed set them apart, but not their logic. A container ship can move more in one voyage than 1,000 caravans in a lifetime. But caravans could adapt in ways ships never could, rerouting around danger, selling goods mid-journey, improvising when the unexpected struck. Ships are orchestras, grand, powerful, but brittle if one note falters. Caravans are jazz, improvised, flexible, able to shift tempo without losing the song. Both exploit geography. Salt grew more expensive the farther it traveled from the mines of Mali. Sneakers grow more expensive the farther they travel from factories in Asia. Whether it's slabs of salt or steel boxes of consumer goods, both systems profit from distance and scarcity. So, which is more advanced? The machine that moves mountains of cargo but collapses when one canal is blocked? Or the human chain that moves slower but bends and adapts when the desert tests it? The answer may be that both are advanced in their own way. Both prove the same truth. Trade is not just about moving goods. It is about creating trust across distance and building resilience in hostile landscapes. From orbit, the Sahara looks like silence, an endless sweep of gold and beige, lifeless and empty. But look closer, and you'll see faint tracks carved into the dunes. They are not roads, they are memories, worn into the desert by centuries of footsteps, the living arteries of an invisible economy. For the Tuareg, caravans were more than commerce. They were survival. Salt cut into slabs, gold carried in pouches, manuscripts packed in leather satchels. These were not just goods, they were lifelines. Every journey was a gamble against thirst, bandits, and storms. Yet for centuries, caravans kept moving, stitching together towns, markets, and civilizations. We often imagine the modern supply chain as the pinnacle of progress. Container ships tracked by satellites, contracts enforced by courts, goods moving across oceans in days. But peel back the steel, and you find the same DNA the Tuareg used under desert stars: movement, coordination, and trust. And fragility remains the common thread. When a single ship wedged itself into the Suez Canal, billions of dollars in global trade froze. When a pandemic shut ports and factories, shelves emptied not because the world lacked goods, but because the chain snapped. For all our paperwork and precision, our system is brittle. The Tuareg, with nothing but camels and memory, built a network that endured centuries of droughts, wars, and collapsing empires. Their strength was not efficiency, it was resilience. Listen to the echoes. A customs officer stamping forms in Singapore and a Tuareg elder granting passage at an oasis both perform the same role, enforcing rules at the edge of trade. A bill of lading in Hamburg and a spoken promise in Timbuktu both serve the same function, guaranteeing trust. A storm battering a container ship in the Indian Ocean and a sandstorm swallowing a caravan in the Sahara both remind us logistics has always been fragile. Perhaps that is the real lesson. Supply chains are not about ships or camels. They are about people. They are about the willingness to risk, to endure, to carry something valuable across a hostile world for the sake of others. So the next time you track a package on your phone, watching it hop from port to port, remember the other supply chain, the one that still moves beneath desert stars, the one that does not need satellites to find its way, the one that turned the Sahara from a barrier into a bridge. Because in the end, whether by camel or cargo ship, by oral promise or stamped paper, the story of trade is the same. It is the story of survival. And survival across centuries and continents has always depended on those willing to carry the load, step by step, across uncertain ground.